Hello and good morning. My name is Lindsay and I'm the founder and chair of Tangerine Communications and the Juice Academy, and I've got a number of non-executive roles, but I'm not the most important person here by a long stretch. We've got some amazing speakers for you today and a really, really interesting subject, evidenced by the number of people who have actually registered today. I think we've had over 100 people register. So it's obviously a subject that is exercising people's minds, hearts and minds, I'd say, actually. Really interesting time for business leaders. So basically, just a big thank you, actually, before we start, a big thank you to Stribe for organising us. It's been absolutely seamless, today's event, and obviously to our speakers who I'll introduce in a moment. The word unprecedented is massively overused. Most words are massively overused at the moment, but unprecedented is a word that is being hugely overused, but it absolutely is an unprecedented time. In my career as a business leader, business owner, I've known times when I've been scared and other people have been scared, my team have been scared of things like losing clients, of things like losing their jobs. But I've never in my life, in my business life or in my actual life, been in a time when myself and my colleagues are scared of their health, of their lives. You know, it's just extraordinary, and obviously their families and friends' lives. So we've got some pretty frightened people out there, and communicating with employees remotely at the best of times is a challenge, and this is far from the best of times, and also the shifting goalposts, the shifting sands. You know, we're in the office, we're out of the office, don't go to the office, do go to the office, you know, and all of a sudden we're used to working remotely, and then we get asked to go back to the office and we start doing that, and all of a sudden it's like, no, don't go to the office. You know, it's like, how on earth do we keep people engaged and motivated during such an upheaval in their lives? So that's what we're here to talk about today, and hopefully our esteemed panel can share some stories and some of their experiences. But the most important thing about this seminar is you attendees. And if you have a question for our panel, we've already got a few that you've asked in advance. Please pop them in the Q&A and we'll go into them. And actually, the organisers are very cleverly, I've never seen this before, if you go in and look at somebody's question and you think it's really interesting, you can actually vote for that question to be asked quicker. So you can kind of upweight their question. So I'm really interested in that question. So you can upweight their question and it'll come to the top. So I'll ask it sooner. So yes, that's kind of the rules. So without further ado, I'm going to ask each of the panelists in order of my screen to introduce themselves and maybe give a very short account of what you've been encountering in among your team. Should we start with you, Michael?
Yes, thank you, Sandy. So I'm Mike Brennan. I'm the founder and CEO of an organization called Toot Toot, and we have a product called Stribe that supports employees to share their concerns, their ideas, their worries directly to their employer when they're unable to do so face-to-face, which is a very topical point of this discussion. From a personal point of view, I have a team of 10, and as a young first-time CEO, it's safe to say I'm very quickly learning on my feet the hard way, but I can honestly say that the team have rallied around me, and I've never seen engagement like it in terms of working towards a common goal and a vision to support what we're trying to achieve. I'm really interested in listening to the panel around how you maintain that and how you ensure that we don't break the people around us and our teams that are doing a brilliant job. Thank
you, Mike. Caron?
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm Caron Tinto. I am head of HR at a company called Halliwell Homes. We are a social enterprise with looked after children, which is basically residential children's homes and also on-site education. So we have a mixture of staff. We have office workers, we have key workers where they still have to deliver the care to the children. So for me in HR, the last 6 months has been a challenging time, and particularly the well-being of our staff has been paramount in our HR strategy. For me, it's about being inclusive and listening, personalising what we do to our staff at this time, and making sure people feel listened to and that we're treating everyone fairly. So yeah, I'm looking forward to to our conversations, and quick Q&As, keep them coming in. Thank you.
Thank you, Caron. Ian?
Hi, Sandy. Hi, everyone. My name's Ian MacAurthur. I'm the head of the Greater Manchester Good Employment Charter. The Charter is a voluntary assessment scheme for employers across the city region in Greater Manchester. And we support employers that become supporters or members of the Charter. And we support them across a whole range of areas, not just communication and staff engagement, but on things like the real living wage, like how you introduce flexible working, etc., across a whole range of domains that all add up to what we consider to be good employment for the city region. I think reflecting across the last 6 months, because obviously good employment is good employment and it hasn't changed, but goodness, the focus of some of the issues have really changed. And I think learnings we've taken, things that we've already known perhaps, but really just re-emphasized that people need people. People need clarity of communication. Oh my God, don't we now? And then I think probably the thing that's really struck us over the last 6 months is just how apparent the inequalities across not just the work environment, but society in general have come to the fore and been amplified by the experience of the last 6 months. And certainly that's something we're trying to focus on moving forward.
Yeah, very good point. Thank you, Ian. Jenni?
Hi Sandy, and hello everybody. Good to be here today. Thanks for having me, Mike. My name's Jenni Workman. I am the Global People Consultation Programme Manager at Arup. I work in the Global People team. I'm usually based in London. I live in London, so still here. We're a global design company, most famous probably for the Sydney Opera House, but also the Leadenhall building and things like that. So we're a creative consultative kind of services a sort of operation. We have people who are experts in tunnels, who are experts in acoustics, and we have a really broad range of disciplines that support our strapline, which is we shape a better world. Very different to Caron and Ian. So in terms of, hopefully you've got a really nice broad spectrum of sort of companies here today. We are based across the globe, and we've had a lot of global learns through this pandemic in the last 6 months, because actually for us as a company as a whole, this has been going on since the beginning of the year, because we have an office in Wuhan. So we have had a really interesting perspective over this time, and we'll come on to some of that later. But just to give you that feel, in case there's some of you out there who would like to ask about what it means for different regions as well as the UK, we've had both focuses. And like Ian and Caron, never has it been more important to focus on people. I think Ian's point is really brilliant one. It's more about amplifying the people and listening to the people, and that's certainly what we found over the last 6 months. And hopefully as we get into discussion, we can sort of draw out what that means for each of the companies, but also as well, if you've got questions about what that means for you, I can see there's some questions already coming in, because it really is about how we can help with providing some ready examples that are applicable for you.
Thank you, that's brilliant. Right, let's get on with it. So I'm going to try and have you away at the very latest by 5 to 1, probably ideally 10 to 1, because I know we'd all like to have time to have a quick cuppa before, I'm sure, our next Zoom call. So let's start off with a question from Lucy. How can I support a team member who is struggling working from home and missing the bus? I think she means buzz. Let's assume she means buzz of people around them, as this situation isn't going to change for a while. So who would like to start that one? People struggling from home and missing people.
Yeah, do you want me to start a couple of examples from what we've done? We found, so we have, everybody has different views. Some people love working from home, some people don't. So that's why we say we personalise and we listen to the staff. For me, working from home, you don't get that social interaction, you don't get the water cooler chats, the informal chats where you can quite often share knowledge, and people miss that interaction. So for myself, I've introduced, we have fortnightly, for example, a fortnightly team meeting, and at the outset we make it more personable. So we talk about how we are, how's our well-being, what have we been up to. We've had examples at the end of it, keeping it still professional, but we have a little song, and that's just to get people a little bit lively. And that worked quite nice. It caused a lot of laughter. Yeah, so for me, it's keeping that maybe as part of that. Have your formal meetings. Don't have too many, because I think sometimes remotely you can have unnecessary meetings, and we have to respect people's time. But it's making people, still giving them that social interaction virtually. And for me as a leader as well, it's allowing my team to have space as well to do that themselves. So for me, it's encouraging, empowering the teams to connect still on a social level between themselves, virtually, safely.
Thank you. Michael?
Yes, Andy,
unmuted.
Building on from Karen's point of view, for me, it's about building a psychological safe environment where people feel that if they reach the point in which they're feeling isolated or aren't able to speak up about certain concerns, suggestions or ideas, it's about encouraging that continuous communication. So like Karen said, creating that safe environment, whether that is song or that just is a conversation. There's a fine balance, isn't there, between everybody is different, and understanding people's needs and team needs as that increases both in the UK and over the globe is hard to do. But it's about how can you kind of replicate that environment, and unfortunately all we have is technology at this stage to bridge that gap. So it's kind of going that one step beyond, thinking about that person that might be sitting in that chair and isolated, and saying, how can we reach them? How can we prompt them to speak up or to talk? How do we get them involved, particularly if you have different teams? So what we found to work really, really well is that in our quarterly events, we brought them more to weekly now. And it doesn't matter whether you're a developer or whether you're the CEO, we want to hear what's been great about your week and what's been awful, so that hopefully somewhere across the team, it doesn't have to be a development challenge. It can be a positive communication challenge or a friend chat challenge, but it's about creating that environment. Everyone knows it's okay to speak up, which is quite a hard thing to do.
Not very British, is it? That's the thing, to show weakness, really, especially in the workplace. Ian?
Yeah, look, I've seen lots of examples from, the Zoom quiz to Bake Off, actually. I've seen baking demonstrations at lunchtime, which have been fantastic. Bingo, coffee mornings, all that sort of stuff. And yes, it's good, and it certainly plugs a gap. I think it plugged a gap initially. I think if we come up with these solutions this time round, when people are returning and it's winter and it's dark, I think it might get a little bit tired. So I think we are going to have to be a little bit more inventive around that stuff, and I think a little bit more attentive. We've raised the issue about emotional intelligence through a screen, and how difficult that is for managers to read your employees, your staff's state at that time, when all you're seeing is a frame. You're not reading body languages. You're not seeing them during the day, of how their mood swings up and down. So I think there's a challenge for managers to upskill and be even more aware of those signals, and perhaps to reach out in a different way. I completely agree with Karen. There's a danger of over communicating here. But at the same time, I think we can communicate in different ways at different times with different members of staff, so we can start to read them a bit better. I think Michael's point about psychological well-being is well made, but I think at the heart of this is confidence, and it's giving your staff, your employees, confidence, because if they haven't got confidence, if they've got doubts, if they've got areas of the day or spaces in their knowledge around this difficult time, they will fill it, and they'll fill it with worries. So be open, be honest, as far as you can in the communications that you give to your employees, but be vigilant that you might have to vary the ways in which you interact with different members of staff.
That's really helpful. Thank you, Ian. Jenni, did you want to add something?
I vehemently agreeing with what Ian just said about different ways of communicating, and again echoing what Karen said about over communication. We recognised really early on, just in particularly our people team, that we've got loads of different learning styles, personality styles, all that sort of thing. And we have something called a team chit chat once a fortnight, which is great for those of us that really miss that kind of interaction. We've just booked in a Halloween one, we're just planning a Christmas one, so that was good, thinking about those things. But equally thinking about those individuals for whom the water cooler moment actually was probably just a one-on-one situation anyway, and it was a chance happening. How do we create those? And one of the really nice things, is incredibly simple, but I think has been one of the most powerful things for Arup throughout this entire situation. Our chairman, Alan Belfield, was doing a weekly video for a while. He now does a monthly video. But at the end of the video, just as he signs off, he asks us all to contact somebody. Pick up the phone, just make that contact and try and vary who it is that you contact. And if you haven't seen someone pop into a meeting for a while or something, just send an email or a text, but just be reaching out to people as much as you can. I've got a catch up with one of the team this week, because in the office I sit really close to, and we chat lots, but we have had no reason to chat. And she popped up on my LinkedIn profile this week as having a 6-year anniversary at Arup, and I suddenly thought, that was my little reminder. That was fate saying to me, you need to pick up the phone. And we're going to have a chat at the end of this week, and there is no agenda for the chat. Absolutely no agenda. I don't even have like a hidden agenda, like, oh, actually, I just want to ask her this thing, but I'll dress it up as maybe being a welfare chat. It's that genuine welfare chat that we miss. And it's those moments, it's not just water coolers, it's when the screen goes blank at the end of a meeting. And to Ian's point, you're not sure how you've come across. Maybe it was a difficult meeting, maybe you're not sure, maybe it's that time then to reconnect. But it does take effort, and even for the people who are extroverts and maybe are out there and people think, oh, they're okay, you know, we need to check up on each other generally. Never assume, always try and reach out, and maybe just even if it's a text this week, send a text message to somebody and just say, how's it going?
Yeah, and actually often it's the extroverts that will be missing the people more than ever, won't it? You know, I'm a huge extrovert, and I thought during this time I would really struggle, but I actually have been quite fine with it. It's interesting how different people have reacted to it. To Karen's point, everybody's obviously unique, and how do we get under the skin of each of those people? I mean, we at Tangerine, we have all sorts of anonymous ways in which people can put a hand up and say, I need help, I'm not coping, and it doesn't get back to their line managers. That's always the fear, isn't it, that if they admit they're not coping, it's going to look bad on them in the short term or the long term. And it's to Ian's point, making sure you give them confidence that that isn't the case. They can ask for help, and maybe as leaders also admitting we're struggling sometimes too. We're, you know, not as you know, sometimes we get things wrong. We don't know either. Nobody knows what's going to happen with this thing going forward. We just don't know. The only thing we can do is keep pressing on and supporting each other. Crikey, we've got a lot of questions. This is great. Right, David Moore wants to know, says it's much more difficult to switch off. It is, David, and we miss the time spent on our commute to and from the office to engage and prepare for the day ahead, or switch off and prepare for home life. Any advice on a virtual commute? Now, what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to ask everybody every question, because we've only got an hour. So what I'm going to see is if you unmute, it means you want to respond. So Ian, you were quick off the draw there. Go for it.
Before I was in this role, I used to work for myself from home. And the best piece of advice I got was get a dog. And not only does, you know, the dog sleep at your feet, which is great, but you've got to punctuate your day at the beginning, at the end. You move from the breakfast table for a walk for an hour, then you come in and you start work. You do the same at the end, and that substitutes my commute.
It's really interesting, because right at the beginning of this, we've always done some work with the dog rescue centre, and some of our people actually fostered during this time a dog. I don't think any of them are going back, because they've been with them 6 months now. I've got no chance. Karen, you were next up.
Yeah, sorry, I think I don't know whether it was Jenny actually you put the hand up. Was it Jenny? Did you put
Jenny
your hand up?
definitely wants to answer, but I noticed you didn't.
Sorry, yeah. In terms of a commute to work, it's an interesting question. So for me personally, we have people working locally, so commute's not an issue, but I think it's a really good question. For me, my tips might be something on routine. So I think the dog is a great idea. Maybe having, if you typically would sit on a train going to work, sit on your table, allocate that time. If you listen to the music as downtime at the end of the day, do the same. It's visualizing that commute for me. A tip that I would recommend. give it a go. Yeah.
Jenny?
I've got 2 dogs. Probably tells you all you need to know, kind of like double it up. But seriously, I think if you haven't got a dog, get out for a walk. It's actually physically leaving the house and physically getting back into the house. I heard a lovely tip the other day, which I just wanted to share, is that somebody knows when they're at work and when they've left work, when they put a specific pair of shoes on. So rather than slippers, it's a symbolic item. You might guess for me it's necklaces. So I'm in work mode at the moment. You haven't got me in my dog walking clothes, thankfully, because nobody wants that. But it's actually making sure there's some kind of symbolic part of your day that lets your brain know that you've done your commute, you're in your work mode now. But that equally really important, and I know this came across in the question, make sure you reverse it at the end of the day, because it's so important. The other thing I would recommend, something I do personally, is journaling. And I love journaling. At the end of the day, it doesn't have to be much. 3 things that you're grateful for, maybe a success you've had in the day, and then you can unpack, pack the rest of the day up and watch Bake Off.
I also think it's important to make sure that line managers are aware of personal space as well. What we were finding right back at the beginning was people were trying to do things like that, because we were saying to them, if you're working long hours, don't feel guilty, because people still feel guilty. That's that presenteeism. I've got to be at my desk here and then I'm working. Well, actually, if you've been working from 8 o'clock in the morning, then take a 2-hour lunch break, go out for a walk, go out for a bike ride. We were very lucky to have the weather back in the day, and to Ian's point, that's going to be a bit more grim this time round. But what was happening was people were doing that and taking us at our word, which they should, but then line managers were going, where are you? Why haven't you responded to my WhatsApp message? And the pressure was coming from different areas of, if you can't walk and find your colleague around the corner, if they're not immediately responding to your WhatsApp message, you're chasing them. And we had to kind of change that whole way of communicating to stop that. Otherwise, that always on pressure was coming from the top, and it was really causing people some problems. Michael, did you want to add anything?
Just going to build on the point that you said there. I started my trade working in a bank, and you had to be at the bank doors 15 minutes before pay was started, and you had to be there 15 minutes after, and it drove a mindset of 30-minute breaks. So I'm sure my team will tell you, before this whole journey and process, I was conscious of being on time in that old-fashioned structured way, and I will say old-fashioned structured way. And this has taught me to realize that the term switch off is very, very difficult to do at every level of the organization. And obviously certain roles do have a time frame of supporting customers because that's the way that it's set. But it comes from the top, like you say. It's actually filtering that from leadership to say, you need to switch off, and making that environment okay to actually take that 2-hour break, or, that it's okay to start at 10 and finish at 8 at night. Or if you've been on a call till 10, sleep in the day, because you will still get things done as a business if the end goals are structured and set up. So for me, it's knowing what those start and stop end points are, making it really clear, and then building an environment in which people can know it's okay to switch off.
And one of the ways to do that is to do it yourself. You could say, I've just been on a dog walk. What a lovely day it is out there. If you haven't been out today, make sure you get out there. I've just come back from a bike ride. Wow, it's wonderful. I feel so much more refreshed now. I can get on with my afternoon. So you were actually showing that by doing the behaviour yourself. So, go on. Sorry.
Just going to say that's really important. When we get into the winter months, I warn people that you won't get hold of me between about 3 and 4 in the afternoon, because I go for the last of the daylight with dog walks. So that's my precious time. I'll then work afterwards, and it gives me a different dynamic of working, and I just embrace that. But I absolutely think leading by example and saying to people, you won't get me because I'm out on a dog walk. Or if you do get me out on a dog walk, if you suddenly hear the word leave, no, not the squirrel, that is all part of the conversation.
And then you're not saying it to them.
We're just going to make the same point. Recently, I've discovered a great technology. It's called a mobile phone. It allows you to walk and talk at the same time. And I've had a few phone calls recently where I've been out and about, because it's darker in the morning, so you take your walk in the middle of the day. But you can still work. You can still have that conversation rather than the Zoom call. And I think that sets an example as well to other people that, oh yeah, that's okay, it works.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And we've got some democracy going on the chat room now. This is brilliant. We've had a question from Jenni and a vote to actually push it to the top. So many are taking the approach to embed a more compassionate approach towards how we support our colleagues. So how do we also build in equity in opportunities across the workplace and continue to skill up, develop our future talent, all of which helps motivation, purpose, and the overall well-being of our colleagues. I'm looking to see who's unmuted. Nobody's unmuted.
Hi, hello. Yeah, so for me, just breaking that down, so inclusivity is paramount at the moment. In the workplace at the moment, you've probably got people working remotely, some people in the office, key workers, and they may feel aggrieved with that. So you can find sometimes there's a little bit of undercurrents conflict. So for me, as the leaders, it's about, if there is conflict, identifying that, speaking to people, and I'd say nipping it in the bud early on. In terms of fostering inclusivity, how do you achieve that? It's personalising it, it's speaking to the people and talk to them about what they want at the moment, how they see their role working in the climate. It's a really important question, the inclusivity.
It's interesting as well when a lot of employers have actually put pay freezes in place and no promotions, and you know, it's like, how do you reward good work without actually breaking your own rules? It's a really difficult time for that sort of thing, isn't it?
Yeah, we've had as well. We've implemented career pathways. So what we say, the importance with a career pathway is giving people goals, and it motivates them. You're empowering them. So for us, we've had clearly defined career pathways, and the COVID hasn't got in the way of that, which is good. As part of supervision, we're looking at competency frameworks which tie into people's career pathway. That can be achieved still remotely. It may be changing some of the process, how you achieve things, but it shouldn't go on the back burner, I'd say, at the moment, even working remotely. It's being creative with how you achieve that.
Michael?
Yeah, for me, it's about understanding how colleagues want to be supported, first of all, and understanding what colleagues' needs are. In terms of Stribe, I've been fascinated watching my team work in partnership with organizations to try and overcome that exact question. And they implemented a way to pulse micro questions out to employees, but not so much technology, but the outcomes of that was what you thought was the way that you should be supporting your employees to create an inclusive culture and team was very different to how employees wanted to be supported. And it's back to kind of giving confidence, as Ian was saying, and what Caron was saying, of not one size fits all. If you can understand the team dynamics and the environments wherever people are, then that can support to drive that forwards. But I've personally found that fascinating, not only kind of growing a business and introducing a tool, but just watching the shift towards asking rather than assuming. And that's been really interesting to building that supportive approach to helping employees.
And employees and people, especially in younger people like in your team and my team, they're so used to gamifying these things. They're so used to everything being online and being quite confident and comfortable with asking questions on those sort of things and raising their hand via that sort of thing. So those sort of tools aren't right for everybody, but I think with, you know, the future, as obviously people are getting younger and younger, they're going to expect to have access to that kind of thing. Jenny, did you raise your hand even though yes, go for it.
Yeah, no, actually it builds nicely on that point, Sandy. One of the things, sort of turning it on its head, like Caron said, if you break this apart a little bit, one of the things I think about the word equity in there, which is the interesting thing about opportunity, is we're a co-owned business anyway, Arup, but we're quite a large business. So I think you need to think sometimes about those fundamental questions. How big are you? What's your purpose? Those sort of things. And collaboration has always felt right. It's always been something that Arup has done. You can't build a bridge on your own. You need a bunch of people to do that. But actually at this time, when we've had all this technology suddenly appear, and we're all at different stages with our relationship with that technology, we've worked out how we collaborate and ask questions more openly as a business. And I think it's been almost that, it's an awful term in a way, but you'll get where I'm coming from. It's sweating your assets. So are you using your intranet really well? Are you picking up the phone, as Ian has said as well, if that's going to work best? but it's working out how you can truly collaborate within a business. It's really hard for us, it's global, but actually we've found different ways of doing things at different times of the day, and we've experimented. We've not been afraid to at some times say, we're going to put on an event for 2 hours online, is this going to work? We don't know, let's try it and let's fail fast, and then work out if that didn't work, what is a good thing to do. So I'd say to people, try something, just give it a go, try and collaborate, and it's amazing what you can do when you just sort of open yourself up to those possibilities. But as leader, it's really important for us to do it without blame in there, and just fostering and encouraging people to experiment. And for a co-owned business that was built out of innovation, it would seem like a no-brainer, but sometimes it's just remembering what your fundamentals of your business are and giving that a go.
Okay, we're just going to come to one more point from me, and then we'll move on to the next.
Thanks, Sandy. Yeah, we're all answering these questions because they sound so good. You can rely on Jenni to raise the questions around equalities and inclusivity. I think it's, as I said at the opening, a key point. It's key to well-being. I think you know, a more inclusive environment creates a better well-being environment, which creates productivity. So it's absolutely key. I think we had such a bad signal from government on the 24th of March, the day after that the lockdown was announced. The requirement to report gender pay gaps was suspended. Frankly, a ridiculous thing to do, in my view, and sent all the wrong signals. I think from our perspective and the stuff that we've taken from employers across the last 6 months, and it builds on Michael's point, is that we need to monitor this. We need to monitor inclusivity, and we need to talk to our employees, because inclusivity and how people feel about being included will have changed over the last 6 months. It won't be as you thought it was 6 months ago. So managers—
6 days ago sometimes.
Exactly. Managers, leaders really need to be have this fully awareness right at the front of their thoughts at the moment, and constantly work that issue, constantly work that problem, because it's changing in front of your eyes.
Absolutely. So we've had a question from Duncan that's also had 2 votes. Can the panel talk about their experiences, if any, of having a virtual desk mate, i.e. leaving a video call open all day so that you can always have a colleague sitting at the desk next door? Wow, okay, interesting. Anybody want to volunteer?
I was going to say, I've heard of it in Arup. There are people that have done it. Not sure it's for me, Duncan, so I'm really sorry not to be able to answer it personally, but this comes back to that collaboration and experimenting with stuff. So what works for you, try it with a buddy. I have a regular check-in every week with one of my colleagues though. We have different people we report to, so almost to answer another question about just somebody that you have no kind of like responsibility to, if you like, within the organisation, and we check in and see how each other's week's been. We often talk about highlight and a low light, and we talk about a meeting where we think we've really screwed up, or maybe something hasn't gone quite right, or a conversation. We have a bit of a laugh about it, and then we talk about what we're going to do for the weekend, and then we reset on a Monday as well. So for me, it's not exactly that desk next door, but I can see why somebody might want to do it. And I would just wonder, you know, if it's a video, is that right? Is that the right way to do it? Or, you know, do you just do it on Messenger? So again, I'd say, yeah, it sounds like a good idea if 2 people think it's a great idea, but thinking about experimenting with different ways of doing it.
Yeah, there's no right or wrong at this time, is there really? I think that's the key thing. Let's try it. It doesn't work. Let's get some feedback. Let's amend it. Michael?
I think for me, prior to lockdown, we had a small office in Berwick-upon-Tweed, and we have our head office in the Manchester Technology Centre, and we had screens open so the team could feel like they were together, because there was almost a divide between the 2 offices at times through just distance. I think the challenge to continue that in the home environment is you have to respect where people are working, and with other elements around that, it may not always be practical to have that camera on. I haven't tried that at home yet, but we've certainly encouraged communication, not necessarily the video, because there was a point in time where people do get sick of having to put that smile on all the time when you're on video to colleagues. So we did encourage kind of not putting the video on, but keeping the communication open in any form. So we've certainly found huge collaboration and positivity by encouraging our team members to talk across the business, but we haven't sort of said it needs to be an open video or an open room. It's however you want to do that, keep talking and communicating.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but I've never looked at myself so much in my life. I had no idea I talk with such a strange face, and my mouth puts all sorts of different shapes. And yeah, it's a really odd thing, isn't it, to spend all day looking at yourself as well as other people, and it can be a bit distracting, which segues nicely into the point that the question that Celia asked, which is at a point where people are generally overloaded with Zoom calls, what other ways are people finding to engage with and support colleagues? It feels like the last thing we all need is more Zoom calls, even if they are there to show we're there for them. But in reality, we're likely to be away from the office for several more months. Caron?
Yeah, I'll add to that. We're piloting at the moment with Mike and his team, Stribe. So for us, it's opening up communications in different ways. So Stribe, it's about employee voice, and with it, pulse survey. So you can go out and you can ask questions to see how the well-being of the staff. And with that, what we're doing at the moment is we're generating our first pulse survey, linking it to COVID to get feedback for ourselves as leaders, to ask, have we done it right? We're all learning, we may not be doing, gathering ideas, and also I think for us an important one is linking it to motivation of members of staff as well at this time. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which in the workplace is it's basic needs, but it's linking your pulse surveys to, for example, safety in the workplace. Do people feel safe? Do they feel safe working at home? Do they still feel belonging to the organisation? So for us, we're opening up through Stribe, a different forum. Zoom can be overkill. It can be meetings, even in the office, meetings for meeting's sake. So it's tapping in different ways. And adding to that as well, generational needs, digital generation. Yeah, it's expanding, and we're looking at, with Mike, looking now over the next 12 months to evaluate the success. So hopefully we can share that with you as case studies in the future.
Brilliant, thank you. Ian?
Thank you.
Yeah, I was just going to say, look, we can still meet. You know, there are still places that we can meet physically, and even if you do that once a fortnight or once a month, that just mixes it up and gives people that fill up, if you like, that they can actually look at the lovely necklace around Jenni's neck rather than just seeing it across the screen, you know, and you can have a chat about it. It's that sort of interaction. I'll tell you what doesn't work, and I've been on a few of these recently, where I've been in the Zoom call and I've been looking at another meeting, and that mixed format, goodness, it really didn't work for me. So there were people interacting in a room and I was at the end of a big screen and I couldn't interact with them. So I think that's one thing I would steer away from.
That is a real challenge, and even on the tech front, I don't think we've bottomed that yet. What I've seen that as well, where there's 3 or 4 in one room and you're here, is you get a nasty echo. So I know there's some government grants actually available at the moment to pay for new tech to sort of stop that kind of thing. I don't know how you get hold of them, but okay. And the other thing I was going to add to that as well is the old-fashioned phone call. I think we've all forgotten about you can still call people. You don't have to Zoom every single time you want to speak to someone. I mean, before this actually happened, if somebody tried to FaceTime me, I'd have thrown the bloody phone across the room. There's no way I'd have answered it. But now that's the norm, and people forget that actually you just pick up the phone and have a phone call for 3 minutes. You don't have to be on the phone for half an hour. Just ask one question and hang up.
Sandy, I think that's right. I think there's also something about diary discipline. Part of the issue of Zoom is everybody expects you to be available immediately. And that wasn't always the case. You used to blank out space in your diary and say, no, I'm working, stop calling me. And we just need to rediscover that, I think.
Caron?
Yeah, just to add to it as well, just some ideas maybe as well. The government at the moment is recommending for your in your personal lives, maybe like outdoor space throughout the winter to see your family and friends. So for businesses, it could be investing in an outdoor space, a heater, and having, even if it's a fortnightly meeting, a gathering where you all get together, maybe a bit with the weather. But yeah, I think outdoor spaces, well-being, going for a walk, for example, with your manager, doing an informal supervision as part of that, checking in on the welfare, keeping your social distance.
Absolutely. So Kalina Kent, hi Kalina, she's agreed with David Moore's previous question, but also she's saying, I'm finding there's a lot of pressure to do longer hours and even work over the weekend, particularly challenging for people who are used to the structure of a normal working day. And so home working is much harder for them. How are you managing this for your employees? Sorry, Michael, yeah.
I think for me, back to that point that I said before about my learning and building trust, we actually introduced flexible hours, and we're trying to continue to encourage that, because, you know, the employees that we employ to do a job, and to think ultimately at the forefront of doing that. So providing that the customers are supported, then their day and their hours can be managed by themselves. Again, it's about reminding people it's okay to take back those hours and to switch off at the time. But like Jenni was saying, that 3 till 4 walk, that's okay to do. That's okay. The trust is there. And I think it's creating that environment where you understand at the start of the day what you can achieve. What does good look like for the day? What does good look like for your teams? And then what are you looking to achieve on a weekly, monthly and quarterly basis? And as long as that target or that outcome or that customer support factor is achieved, then that's all we can ask employees to do. And I think there's a disconnect right now that business feels slow. So managers are really driving hard to hit new targets, but these new targets may be 10 times greater than they've ever been. And there's a seesaw of, you know, remembering what you've asked your employees to do in the first place, what their responsibilities are, sharing the burden in a certain way, but particularly if you're kind of a smaller team, remembering that the words you use and the language that you use and that how you work can affect those and can make people nervous and can make people excited. So I think it's planning. It's
really interesting, isn't it? We've talked about this flexible working for many, many years, and we've never really achieved it. I remember a few years ago at Tangerine and people saying flexible working, and we were like, well, what is it? And they were like, well, we don't know. And we said, well, I'll tell you what, let's just do it. Let's see. And then they were like, but what does it mean? What hours should we be working? And it's not normal. People are not comfortable with it. Well, this is it, and this has forced us into doing that very thing, and making people feel comfortable with it, and making their line manager. I don't know if you saw recently on Twitter, there was a guy got absolutely lambasted because he's found a way to monitor and watch his staff digitally. It's like, no, that's the absolute opposite of what you should be doing as a business leader, as a manager, as somebody who trusts their team. Caron?
Yeah, just adding to that, I think I was going to touch on the trust. It's so important. So the leader, and at Halliwell, we've done a lot in terms of management development programs. So a challenge that we found, or I've noticed, is that we have subsets of managers. So you have your like I don't know if people have heard of McGregor's theory, which is your X and Y manager. So your X managers are typically they're more probably going to be nervous about remote working, and they like the control. They like to be present with people and see that they're doing the work. Whereas you Y managers, they're more empowering, and they're more likely to welcome remote working. So for us, the management development program is about opening up that with managers. There's no right or wrong, but it's that trust. And for me, you're going to get high performing teams if you trust your teams. It's sometimes helping the managers break down that barrier just to help them get to that way of thinking too.
Yeah, difficult. Ian?
Couldn't agree more with Caron. It's about trust, but it underpins that is, I think, the leadership values and the values of the organisation that set that environment in which you can build trust. And you know, if it comes from the top, then it runs all the way through. We've worked, just as a piece of resource, we've worked very closely with an organisation called TimeWise. TimeWise have a range of resources to support employers and how they can introduce flexible working. It's absolutely paramount to how we live and move forward through living with COVID, not just for care needs, but for childcare needs, etc. But also when we do return to the cities and we do have a commute, when we're going to have to judge our commute at different times if we're going to avoid overcrowded trams, trains, and the road network. So it's vital for not just for our health, but for productivity moving forward.
I think you're right, and I think when I had a day job, it was I used to do crisis management, and I always used to say, you know, that there's no crisis that doesn't also throw up opportunities. And I think all of those things, all of these communication tools we've discovered, which we never got into in any kind of formatted way before, means we're going to have less of a commute, means we're not just going to travel to the other side of the country or the other side of the world just to do a 10-minute meeting. You know, all these things will help with the environment, with mental health. So I think coronavirus, for all of its downsides, has definitely given us some opportunities within business. And on that point, Amanda, oh, sorry, Jenny, did you want to?
Just one tiny little point to add. I noticed that some of people around the firm globally at Arup have put a little strapline on their email, which will be familiar to most of you, but it's worth thinking about. If you receive this email out of your normal working hours, I don't expect you to respond immediately. Back to Ian's point earlier, we're expected to be always on at the moment. I think this is one of the things that isn't helping with this 24/7 approach. It's the diary management, it's maybe putting something like that on your email. It's actually almost the simple things that can help you then actively switch off, and using your phone, not only for a phone call maybe, but maybe setting a timer so that in an hour's time you know that you're going to have a tea break or you're going to have lunch, and that you actually actively do those things, which means that you start building good habits, because we're all about habits. We're human beings, we're creatures of habit, and we've had all those habits broken. To Vince's point, we are at home working during a crisis, therefore we need to be kind to ourselves, kind to each other, and part of that kindness is having that cup of tea. And if it's your 7th cup of tea of the day but you need it, you have that cup of tea, because tomorrow you may only have 2 and work really super fast. But it's living in the moment, being in the day, and taking the pressures off you that sometimes might be perceived rather than real as well.
Great, thank you. I'm conscious of time, so we've got Amanda has said, I find that staff often want a non-connected person, not boss, not family, to talk to about what they're feeling. So a confidential mental health line helps. Do the speakers agree? And then Vince has very helpfully put a suggested one in the chat if anybody wants to have a look at that. What are we thinking about that, Michael?
I completely agree. I think it's a tool belt of support back to understanding the needs of the employees. There will be some that will want to speak face-to-face to a line manager and need that absolutely now. There'll be somewhere in the middle where they'll need digital tools like a Stribe to start that conversation, to test the waters, to make sure that they can get some support. And then absolutely the likes of an EAP or support helpline and framework externally. Those 3 parts of the jigsaw need to be together. So if you don't have all of them 3, I would certainly recommend you review that tool belt of how your employees can speak up, because from our experience, organizations are very good at kind of looking from leader and managers into employees and feeling like they've got a framework, but actually asking your employees how you would like to speak up, it tends to fall into 3 of those: face-to-face, digital, or external. There's lots of different ways you can put that combination together, but I agree, you absolutely should have a mechanism away from the business, but equally the mechanism does need to feed back into the business, because where the failures come, particularly that negative end, is you speak outside of the organization is never aware that this is going on or even given a report back. It's very difficult there for the organization to change that environment that they probably can. So it's making sure that all of it works together, in my view.
Absolutely right. Caron?
Yeah, just adding to that, Mike, really important. I think it's having a variety of mechanisms for staff to access. So your employee assistance program is key. That's generic. Also as well, we've introduced more specific to the sector. So we've sourced, for example, a counsellor who's worked within the sector. So that's more personable, more bespoke. They can relate to the challenges, the difficulties of roles. And also as well, we've implemented reflective learning. So before people get to the stage where they may need counselling, it's about reflecting. So at the end of supervision or the end of a difficult day, We do reflective learning. All managers are trained in it, and they ask them what's been difficulties of the day. If they don't feel comfortable speaking to the manager, absolutely, I'd say employee assistance program, counselling, and that has to be trusted. Staff need to feel that they could go and speak to that person. And as Mike said, it needs to be fed back in terms of metrics, but not necessarily they need to know it's confidential. Yeah, thank you.
Brilliant, thank you. We've had a comment in the chat from Michael DiPaolo about his Fresh Walks events. Now, I've been on one of these and they are amazing. They are so supportive. You get out, it's a kind of networking as you walk. The people that go on it are tremendous. So if anybody hasn't tried it, I would really recommend it, and I'd recommend it for your teams as well. Caron, you mentioned earlier, you know, go for a walk with a line manager, go for a walk with a colleague. It's a safe way of actually just double checking that your team are happy and being supportive.
I like that idea. Yeah,
it's a great idea. It is really good. Check it out, the website. I can't remember what it's called, but I'm sure you'll find it. It's called Fresh Walks.
Fresh Walks.
And I'm going to make this the last question of the day. Michelle, we're trying to support our people managers on how to best support their direct reports well-being remotely, but struggling to get engagement from them, offering all types of training but lack of uptake. How can we gain engagement in order to help them to have a well-being conversation? Michael?
Sandy. This relates back to what we're trying to do as an organisation of Stribe, which is to drive engagement. So again, this element of asking and pulsing questions to employees that allows them to give that feedback potentially over the line managers to start with, just to help shape and support, because it's back to that line manager support and we don't know what we don't know right now. So being able to get that overall feedback, understanding the needs of your people today as opposed to yesterday and then tomorrow, and arming your people managers with those insights, because there'll be a reason why people don't want to engage. It won't be the fact they're not engaging. It will be a trust issue, as Caron's saying, or a confidence issue. So it's actually asking those questions about how can we support your engagement? Why won't you speak to your people managers, as opposed to assuming that's the case? So it's data is key, and speaking to your staff, understanding their needs is super important.
Ian and then Caron, very, very quickly, because I want to try and finish in a couple of minutes.
It really will be, because Michael said it. I was just going to make the point about trust and confidence, which Michael's already made. And I think what Stribe offers is a mechanism to do that in terms of the open question and getting that feedback.
Definitely. Caron?
Yeah, just adding very quickly, if this in terms of the managers not maybe being on board with it as well, I'd say it's finding out, break down what the managers' concerns are, why they don't want to have them conversations, and giving them the confidence, maybe HR or a leader working with the manager to help them have them conversation with the members of staff, giving them the reassurance. We're all busy, but it's worth that investment. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Right, brilliant. I've said I'd get people away before 5 to, and it's just about there now. So massive thank you to Michael, Caron, Ian and Jenni for brilliant stories and points, and a massive thank you to all of the participants for all of your fantastic questions. Really, I haven't had to look at any of my questions because you've been well ahead of me. If anybody wants any more information about Stribe, do get in touch with Michael and Lucy and have a chat with them. Some of the things that they're working on are really cool, and we've started looking at it at Tangerine as well. So do have a chat with them. It's really worth it. So well done, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. Thank you all.
Thank you, Sandy.
Thank you very much, Sandy. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.